All right, so now I'm going to do the section with the lettering, and I'm again going to make it darker. I'm going to make it like a dark green blue. I'm going to use a little black for this one, and I'm filling in everything around the letters and even coming up maybe a little bit to the edge of the letter just so I can then paint the lettering back over it. So I don't want to cover up my lettering. I'm just first coming all around it with a wet brush to make the paper a little bit damp where I want to add the paint for the background. And that'll help me control my paint a little bit by having the paper wet in the areas where I want paint to go. So you can do obviously whatever background color you want. I'm doing this sort of darker green blue. I don't want it that black. Let's see. Let's see what that looks like. Well, that's a good color. So I'm getting the color I want and I'm filling it in onto all the areas around the letters, and it's okay. It's better to overlap the edge of the letter a little bit. Then you don't want any of white of the paper in between where you're going to paint your letters and where the background is. So it's better for it to overlap the edge than to leave some white space of the paper, if that makes sense. I have shaky hands from drinking too much coffee, but that's okay. It adds texture, coffee texture. So just fill that in. Actually, I like this color. It's like dark teal, and I do want to make the edge of this shape pretty sharp. So I'm gonna also pay attention to how the edge is working with the rest of my composition. I think I need a little more water here. So if you realize you forgot to put some water in some parts of it, that's okay, just add some now. And then, you don't want to show all these brush lines, so I'm kind of just like moving the paint around the paper so it looks more uniform. So you can go in different directions and pull the paint around. And get this edge here. I need to mix up some more of this to make like a darker, more opaque version of this color to get that edge looking right. Let's see. All right, there we go. Get some paint on there. And now I'm gonna pull this down around the letter so it doesn't look like just a line that's not meant to be there. So I'm really filling it in. And again, overlapping a little bit if you need to. And we could always see how it dries, and you can come back and do another color on top of it if you don't like it. So, you're never stuck with one thing. I'm going probably a little faster than you would because I Don't want these videos to go on forever and ever. So there we go, almost done. And then I'm just gonna sort of clean up some of the brush strokes. I haven't wet my brush or added any more pigment to it. It's just how it was when I was painting. So I'm just gonna carefully get some of the more obvious things out of the way, and then I'll see how it looks when it dries. So I'm just going different directions with my brush to kind of smooth it in. When you're working around details like this in the background, it can be hard to get it looking all solid and smooth. Okay, I'm gonna say that that is good. And now you really want to wait for all of this to dry, because we're going to be doing details on top of it. I'm going to be doing trees on here, and then I'm going to be painting the letter, filling in the letters. So take a break, wash your brushes, and come back to do the details. All right, so I've let everything dry, and now I'm going to fill in the letters. I'm using smaller brushes for that, and I want them to be light, but I want them to be opaque light. So in the gradients, we used water to make the color lighter, but that has transparency in it. On this, since I have the dark background going into and sort of overlapping the edge of my letters, I want the light color to be opaque and cover up that dark. So the way we do that is by using white paint or, yellow. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of green and yellow ochre to try to give it a little brightness, a little color, and not just be white. A little like minty green. But obviously you can make yours whatever you want. What I'm doing is showing you different techniques and different ways to use the paint to get the effect that you want to get. I think this needs a little more color in it. And now that's going right over the dark background. So you want to think about, your edges here and how you're creating them. And I'm just going to smooth this out. And so design your letters so they're easier to paint, right? You don't want them to be too delicate so that they're so hard to paint. And at this point, you can change your design. You are the artist. So if the lettering that you wanted to do isn't working out, that's okay. You're learning something important and something that will help you in future paintings. And you just need to make those adjustments and don't let it stress you out. And I want to get the paint on here. So this is a really different painting technique than the gradient, because I barely am using any water. I'm just using a bit of a damp brush, and I have very opaque paint to make these crisp edges. So I'm gonna fill this in and then let it dry a little bit. And then I'll do some shadows to make the detailing of the letter a little more interesting. You can do sort of shadows or highlights and really take your time. And make it look awesome. So I'm gonna take a minute to keep on filling this in, and you can keep watching or you can move on. Just let it dry before you do any details. So this painting requires a little bit of patience of letting kind of each section dry and then going back to getting details in there. So that's why I'm kind of trying to show you all these different techniques and when to know when to let something dry and when to know to work on it, when to start working on it, or what you want to leave not dry or damp. So I just want to fill in, and since this is going to be, some of these edges will be the final product, I am gonna come with my even smaller brush and just make sure I get it the way I want it to look. And remember, with the smaller brush, it means you're loading paint on it more. So that's why I start with kind of the biggest brush that I have, that I can use, that makes sense to use for what I'm doing. And remember, it's gonna dry a little bit different. So if you have some parts that dry and some parts that are still damp, it's better just to wait until the whole section is dry to know what it's actually going to look like. If you've ever seen the Sistine Chapel by Michelangelo, it's in the Vatican in Rome. If you've ever seen pictures of it, I mean, it's reproduced all over the place. So even you've probably seen pictures, even if you don't know that that's from the Sistine Chapel. It's like the two hands touching each other. So Michelangelo painted that in a technique called fresco, which is pigment mixed with plaster. And when it's dry, it looks completely different than when it's wet. And so he was doing that up on scaffolding, laying on his back into the ceiling, and you can't see any of the difference between colors in the sections that he worked in. He's just was such a genius that he could understand exactly what it would look like when it was dry, and he was able to match those colors, which I think is very remarkable. It's hard enough to do with this gouache. Okay, let this dry and we'll fast forward a little bit to the next part. Okay, so I'm gonna do a shadow shape, and on here on my practice, I did it as a highlight, so you can do either one. I realized I just missed that piece there. So you can really do this however you want. You can outline the whole thing or just do one side, but I think it adds more dimension. So I'm going to take the two colors I was using and make this sort of bright green and see how that looks. I'm going to have my smallest brush, and it's a little bit damp. I'm going to roll the brush in the paint and get paint all on the bristles, and then just come in here and add the detail. And I'm keeping it inside what I've already created. So I don't need to make mine any bigger, but if you felt like yours needed to be bigger, you could of course paint this on the outside, but I'm keeping it inside the form here. And I think I need a little bit more water. And you know, if you have a really small brush like this, it is a lot about patience and just getting it done. You could also use pen here if you wanted to use pen. You could even, if you have markers, you can use marker. I've drawn on top of gouache with Sharpie, which is kind of fun. So if you have different materials, you can test them out. And you can add all kinds of details in here. You know, you could do, like, I've seen people do really cool, like dots getting from small to big. You can look up, there's all kinds of amazing design elements for lettering. All right, there's a good consistency on my brush. I was having trouble getting the right amount of water to paint ratio. So, but it looks like I got a nice smooth line there. And I want to do this. I still have a shaky hand because of course I drank more coffee. So not helping. But you know what? It's made by hand, and if it was perfect, we wouldn't have made it ourselves. And I think those intricacies are what make handmade art more interesting. I need a little dab of water over here. Get my consistency right. So I do think it's worth it to spend the time on details like this because I think it adds a whole new dimension. You can also, if you want to change the shape of your letters, you can come in with the background color. Again, if you can't match the background color, you can repaint the whole thing. I've definitely done that before. So don't be afraid to just go for it. This needs to come up a little more. And take your time to make it something that you're proud of and something that looks right to you. I think since I made those dot details, I need to make some over here. And I've seen people do like diamond shapes and all different kinds of cool things in their lettering. Ooh, this needs it too. So definitely go for it. See what you want to create. See what feels right for you. Okay, I'm gonna leave it like that. Oh no, I wanna do one more, a couple highlights. So that was kind of a shadow shape, and then I might just take a little bit of white, see if it shows up on here. You can do a little highlight like that. Just to give it more dimension, you could even come up here and do some highlights. And you know, this is giving it more dimension, but it's also reshaping the edge of the letter. So that can help you out too if you got, if you have shaky coffee hands like me. So keep going with yours and make it look the way you want it to look. Try out different colors. That you could do complementary colors on here. This is more of a monochromatic version, but you can do a lot of really fun stuff with the lettering. Next, we're going to move on to the tree details.